when we first started using Cilium for network policy implementation, it was just important for us to understand how identities work and the number of identities that get created based on our different configuration. And it was, again, just about performance testing for us. So I think that was a learning curve. But again, like we're really confident with it now, and everything did end up working with the right configuration and so on. So, but definitely I would say if you're at larger scales, it's worth trying it out somewhere before you go into prod at scale. Yeah.
Thomas.
So I think the most fundamental issue I've seen is, I think the assumption is that Kubernetes will automatically, I mean, Kubernetes created by Google, it's going to be secured by default, right? That was the expectation. And I think in a lot of ways, it's not a completely wrong assumption. Kubernetes has a lot of concepts which make it very, very easy to get to like zero trust and least privilege and so on. But yeah, if you're not creating any network policies, everything is allowed. And I think wide range of users still don't fully understand this. So that's, I think, where it actually starts. Like even just understanding you're starting out with like an entire flat layer 3 network. Everything is allowed to talk to everything, which is great from a connectivity angle, but it's the worst possible scenario for anything, for any type of lateral movement protection. So that's like, I think, step one. And then there's pitfalls, I think, in how you use YAMLs, which is kind of why we created the editor. Those are the two major problems we have seen our users fall into.
Liliya.
Yeah, so I think for us, the most important piece was creating a good documentation and communicating to application teams how to write policies and educate them and help them initially to get used to writing the policies. So we really removed this bottleneck of platform team being responsible for writing every application's network policies, and we could delegate this process to applications.
Great. I think one other trap that we kind of have to mention, because you can't have a discussion about things going wrong in networking without mentioning DNS. But I think it's a reasonably easy thing to do to sort of prevent DNS traffic and then wonder why nothing can find any other services. And I think we actually have that in the network policy editor. It will highlight if you aren't enabling DNS.
Yeah, there's this big fat warning. If you're not enabling DNS, there's this warning, because like everybody falls into this trap. Like most policy examples you see, here is how to allow pod to pod. But then I think the notion of that you also need DNS, and ideally you also need ICMP. That's kind of hidden, right? It's not in the mental model if you're talking service to service that, hey, there is things like DNS and ICMP and other control protocols. Yes, definitely another, I mean, it's always DNS anyway, but like even for network policy, it's definitely quite frequent as well.
Eric, did you want to add something there?
To the DNS part, I think we actually took the path of making that a cluster-wide policy. I think cluster-wide policies, one thing I will say about those is do be careful and very selective about which ones you do, because once you've made a cluster-wide policy, it does tie the platform's team's hands to some extent. That they're going to have to maintain that, and the evolution is going to be complicated. And I think the other thing is, if we mention DNS, we have to mention YAML, right? And YAML indent and things like that. I think it's actually already been mentioned, but it's one of those. We actually got away fairly well with that, because once we had the documentation out there, people were doing a lot of actually copy pasting YAML, and that helped an awful lot.
In historical context, right, Dan, I don't know if you were participating at this point, but right before network policy was going to go GA, we found some gotchas that we had not handled properly, and we made some last second changes to the API and then went into GA with those. And I think those are the things that people tend to trip over the most. It's the places where the YAML, like the existence of a dash or not dash, changes the meaning. It's valid in both ways, but it completely changes the meaning of the YAML. And so like in hindsight, that was kind of a mistake to rush it, and B, to make it so easy to get wrong. So, you know, Kubernetes has this guarantee that we can version the APIs and provide round trip compatibility. So one day we will open a V2 discussion on network policy, and one of the criteria for a V2 will be less easy to get wrong.
In fact, I'm seeing in the Slack channel Ricardo posting a link to a document about V2, network policy V2 guiding principles. So it sounds like that conversation is imminently arriving.